During the 17th century, the silver in British coins was worth more than the coins themselves, so people started shaving it off. Sliver by sliver, the currency was quietly collapsing. And the solution the government came up with changed the look of every street in England. And it's still there. You can still see it. Right now, today, on buildings that have been standing for 300 years. In 1696, under the reign of William III, a new act called the Act of Making Good the Deficiency of the Clipped Money was introduced. And buried inside that act, almost as an afterthought, was one of the strangest taxes in the history of Western civilization. The window tax, based on the number of windows in a house, was introduced to cover revenue lost by the clipping of coinage. Nobody planned to tax light. They were trying to save the currency, but that's exactly what happened, and the consequences lasted 155 years. This video is about that tax, where it actually came from, how people dodged it in ways that are genuinely funny, and what it left behind in the brickwork. And there's one thing almost everyone thinks they know about this story that is completely wrong. I'll get to that at the end, and it's the part that'll make you want to correct everyone you know. But first, let's talk about the tax that came before it, because that's where this whole thing gets interesting. Before the window tax, there was the hearth tax, and the hearth tax had a serious problem. The window tax was designed to impose tax relative to the prosperity of the taxpayer, but without the controversy that then surrounded the idea of income tax. The hearth tax required officials to physically enter your home and count your fireplaces. People hated it, not just because of the money, because of the intrusion. A government man walking through your front door, going room to room. It felt like a violation, and the public backlash was real enough that the government eventually had to find a different way. So they looked at the outside of the building instead. Windows. You could count them from the street. No knock on the door, no inspector in your hallway, no invasion of your home. It was a simple and fast way of estimating a person's financial situation without them having to declare their personal income to the government. The government had essentially invented drive-by taxation to solve a privacy scandal, which, honestly, sounds like something a tech company would pitch in a board meeting today. When the window tax was introduced, it had two parts: a flat-rate house tax of 2 shillings per house and a variable tax for the number of windows above 10. Properties with between 10 and 20 windows paid an extra 4 shillings, and those above 20 windows paid an extra 8 shillings. So if you had 9 windows, you were fine. 10, and the meter started running. That threshold, that specific number, is where things get creative. Because people are very, very good at not paying taxes. When the tax was extended in 1766 to include houses with 7 or more windows, the number of houses in England and Wales with exactly 7 windows reduced by nearly 2/3. Think about that. Not 6, not 8, exactly 7. The moment the threshold shifted, the architecture shifted with it. Georgian builders and homeowners didn't just grumble, they did the math and started designing around the brackets. Houses clustered at exactly 9 windows, then 14, then 19, one under the cutoff every time. You can walk down a Georgian street today and see it. The buildings are telling you, if you know what to look for, exactly where the tax brackets fell. And if you couldn't redesign the whole house, you bricked the windows up. In Scotland, some householders painted false windows with black paint and white frames, nicknamed Pitt's Pictures. In England and Wales, entire rows of terraced houses display bricked-up sections where windows once existed. Some of those trompe-l'oeil fake windows in Bath still have painted curtains on them. Someone sat down and painted curtains onto a wall so a tax inspector would think there was a room behind it. That is a level of commitment I genuinely respect. And here's the part Parliament actually had to sit down and debate. What even counts as a window? The interpretation of the tax was very strict. No definition of a window was included in the legislation, and it tended to be interpreted in such a way as to include the smallest of openings in any wall. In some cases, even perforated grates in larders were charged as if they were a large window. A hole that let in light was a window. A brick that fell out of your wall and left a gap, potentially a window. And if that gap pushed your total count over a threshold, every single window in the house jumped to a higher rate. Grown statesmen in Parliament arguing about the legal definition of a hole in a wall. It happened. Certain rooms, particularly dairies, cheese rooms, and milk houses, were exempt, providing they were clearly labeled, and it is not uncommon to find the name of such rooms carved on the lintel. So if you walk past an old building and you see dairy carved in stone above a doorway, there's a decent chance there was never a dairy there. Someone just needed a window exemption and grabbed the nearest qualifying category. That carving is a 300-year-old tax dodge, still readable in the stone. So you've got bricked-up windows, painted fake ones, buildings designed around specific numbers, and dairy signs that have nothing to do with dairy. The evasion is literally written into the architecture. And the fact that you can go find these things on an actual street this weekend, that's what makes this tax unlike almost any other piece of history. It didn't just happen. It left marks. Now, there's something else worth knowing about who this tax actually hurt. And this is where it stops being funny. In towns and cities, it was unusual for the working classes to live in individual homes. They would usually live in large tenement buildings which, however they had been subdivided, were considered to be one dwelling under the terms of the tax, and therefore subject to heavy window tax assessments. As it was the landlord who was subject to the tax, windows in tenement buildings were often boarded up and new buildings were constructed without sufficient window accommodation. This led to indirect health issues with a lack of ventilation and light contributing to typhus, smallpox, and cholera. The poor didn't own the buildings. They just lived in them, in the dark, while landlords passed the cost on in rent and boarded up the light. There was a strong agitation in England in favor of abolition during the winter of 1850 to 1851, and the tax was accordingly repealed on 24 July 1851. In spite of the pernicious health and aesthetic effects and widespread protests, the tax had persisted for over a century and a half. 155 years of bricked-up windows, painted curtains, fake dairies, and people living without light, all because the silver in coins was worth more than the coins themselves. If you've been enjoying this, drop a comment below with the most interesting tax dodge you know. I genuinely want to read them. And if you want to keep going with strange history that actually changed the physical world around you, there's a video right here that fits perfectly. But first, the thing everyone thinks they know. The one fact that gets repeated in every article, every pub quiz, every documentary about this tax. Daylight robbery. The phrase supposedly came from the window tax. The government taxed your daylight, so people called it daylight robbery. It's a perfect story. It's clean. It's clever. It's the kind of origin that makes you feel smart for knowing it. The saying daylight robbery is popularly believed to originate with the window tax, but there appears to be no scholarly support for this. The exact phrase daylight robbery did not appear in print until 1916, more than 60 years after the tax was officially repealed. No reputable authority would suggest the phrase and the window tax were connected because of the way it clearly developed. It comes without doubt from a literal daylight robbery. To attempt one during the day rather than under cover of darkness was to be daring or audacious because of the much greater risk. The phrase just means a robbery done brazenly, in broad daylight. That's it. The window tax connection is a story people invented because it sounds right, and it spread because nobody checked. Every other channel repeats it. Now you know it's wrong. So here's where we actually are. A coin-clipping crisis in the 1690s accidentally produced the most architecturally visible tax in British history. The government invented drive-by surveillance to replace a privacy scandal. People responded by bricking up windows, painting fake ones, and carving dairy into lintels. The poor lost their light and their health, and the phrase everyone uses to describe the whole thing has nothing to do with it. The tax was repealed in 1851. But the bricked-up windows are still there. The painted curtains are still there. The carved exemptions are still there. Go find them. They're not in a museum. They're on the street, and they've been waiting 300 years for someone to look up and notice.